In the grand tapestry of literature, few stories have left as indelible a mark as Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, a novel first unveiled in 1719. This prose romance chronicles the fictional escapades of Robinson Crusoe, an Englishman brimming with ambition, whose restless spirit compels him to set sail, much to his father's dismay, who pleaded for a more secure middle-class existence. Following a devastating shipwreck, Crusoe finds himself marooned on a deserted island, where he endures nearly 3 decades of profound solitude. Yet, this isolation becomes a powerful testament to human ingenuity and resilience. Through Crusoe's first-person account, Defoe crafts a narrative that extends far beyond mere adventure, subtly embedding the foundational concepts of modern individualism and the burgeoning principles of capitalism. Scholars widely regard Crusoe as the quintessential archetype of the modern individual, a figure characterized by self-reliance, autonomy, and a strong sense of personal agency, thereby marking a significant shift into the early stages of modernity. As one insightful analysis points out, the novel vividly illustrates the emergence of economic individualism and the concept of Homo economicus, the rational economic man, all within the context of capitalism's ascendance. Crusoe's narrative is far more than a simple survival story. It symbolizes the triumph of the bourgeois subject, demonstrating how individual will can reshape the material world, thus laying crucial groundwork for capitalist ideology. Daniel Defoe, a prominent dissenter and an exceptionally prolific writer born around 1660, penned Robinson Crusoe during a truly pivotal era in 18th-century England. This period was defined by the intellectual ferment of the Age of Enlightenment, propelled forward by the economic forces of mercantilism, the expansion of colonial ventures, and the pervasive influence of the Protestant work ethic. Defoe himself was a product of these transformative times, having worked as a merchant, a journalist, and an occasional conformist, skillfully navigating the complexities of religious persecution and periods of economic prosperity. Drawing inspiration from the real-life experiences of castaways such as Alexander Selkirk, Defoe published his novel amidst Britain's rapidly growing empire, a time when burgeoning trade routes to the Americas and Africa were significantly amplifying the reach of colonial capitalism. The novel perfectly captures this prevailing zeitgeist. Crusoe's own voyages serve as a clear parallel to England's burgeoning imperial ambitions, encompassing everything from the establishment of slave plantations to the systematic extraction of natural resources. As literary critic Ian Watt eloquently observes in his influential work, The Rise of the Novel, Defoe's masterful use of formal realism and his adoption of an autobiographical style effectively capture the inherent tension between the inner self and the external world, a characteristic that aligns seamlessly with the principles of Cartesian individualism. The dissenting sects, often comprised of affluent merchants, actively promoted values of hard work and the pursuit of gain, principles that Defoe championed, even while offering critiques of occasional conformity. Consequently, Robinson Crusoe stands as a direct product of early modern capitalism, a period where adventure narratives increasingly glorified economic individualism over the more traditional communal ways of life. At its very core, Robinson Crusoe heralds the profound birth of the modern individual, a self-sufficient entity seemingly detached from the constraints of feudal ties. Stranded and utterly alone, Crusoe becomes the embodiment of rugged individualism. He meticulously constructs his own shelter, diligently cultivates crops, and successfully domesticates goats, effectively transforming the untamed wilderness into his own private domain. Analyses offered by economic theorists and literary critics alike consistently position him as the definitive symbol of post-traditional man, a figure whose personal initiative supersedes the dictates of divine fate or communal obligation. As one document from Scribd aptly states, Crusoe serves as a prime illustration of economic individualism and the simultaneous emergence of capitalism and individualism, both advancing in tandem. Ian Watt further connects this literary development to the novel's innovative form, arguing that it reflects the perceiving individual ego that was so perfectly suited to modernity's increasing focus on inner experience and the tangible material reality of the world. No longer bound by rigid social hierarchies, Crusoe's full development of his personality unfolds in the crucible of isolation, serving as a powerful precursor to the rise of the bourgeois subject. This archetype, while offering a critique of older societal structures, simultaneously celebrates the fundamental shift from communal societies, often symbolized by the concept of the body politic, to the increasingly autonomous economic man. Crusoe's extraordinary island odyssey serves as a crystallization of the concept of Homo economicus, the rational, profit-maximizing economic man who stands as a central figure in capitalist ideology. Economists dating back to Adam Smith have frequently invoked this figure as a foundational model. Crusoe meticulously accounts for every resource, prioritizing labor, production, and the generation of surplus evidenced by his efforts in baking bread from grain or tanning goat skins for clothing. He approaches every element of his existence with a keen sense of market value, even going so far as to enslave Friday and Zuri, thereby embodying the historical processes of primitive accumulation and the problematic realities of racial capitalism. ResearchGate papers have delved into analyses of Crusoe through the lenses of new historicism and utilitarianism, demonstrating how Crusoe consistently prioritizes economic motives over other relationships, rationally allocating his labor to maximize both his survival prospects and his accumulated wealth. As a Marxist critique presented on Scribd points out, he exemplifies the very essence of the capitalist spirit, with his deliberate division of labor separating the tending of crops from the herding of goats, mirroring the drive for industrial efficiency. Defoe portrays Crusoe as largely devoid of deep emotional ties, instead focusing on his calculated risk-taking for the sake of business expansion, all hallmarks of the Homo economicus. This influential figure, whose lineage can be traced from Defoe through the philosophical works of Rousseau and into the realm of neoclassical economics, underscores modernity's profound fusion of individualism and capitalism. Crusoe's diligent ledger-keeping and his continuous improvements to the island effectively transform it into a proto-factory, thereby validating the principles of the Protestant work ethic and the practice of colonial exploitation as legitimate pathways to prosperity. On the sun-baked, solitary shores of his island exile, Robinson Crusoe masterfully transforms the very act of survival into a detailed ledger of enterprise. Daniel Defoe's seminal 1719 novel, The Life and Strange Surprising Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, is replete with vivid capitalist metaphors. Crusoe's meticulous accounting of every resource from barrels of gunpowder carefully tallied to goats domesticated into thriving herds, and crops rotated with calculated yield serves as a direct parallel to the rise of economic individualism. As one insightful analysis notes, Crusoe perfectly embodies the Homo economicus, a rational actor driven to maximize utility even amidst profound scarcity, his labor not merely toil but a strategic investment yielding valuable surplus. He even salvages gold from the shipwreck, meticulously wrapping it in canvas despite its immediate lack of utility, only to hoard it as future capital, a behavior that strongly echoes Defoe's own deep-seated mercantile obsessions. These detailed inventories are far from idle lists. They function as proto-balance sheets, where Crusoe's systematic colonization of the island, felling trees to create enclosures and baking bread from salvaged grain, prefigures the very processes of capitalist production. Critics interpret these elements as Defoe's deliberate graphing of the ideals prevalent during the colonial era, the glorification of self-reliant accumulation, where the forces of nature are systematically bent to human calculation, a narrative that was disseminated worldwide, evidenced by the novel's impressive 196 English editions by the 19th century. Crusoe's compelling tale provides a crucial anchor for understanding the birth of the modern individual, a concept that resonates deeply with the principles of Lockean liberalism and the tenets of the Protestant work ethic. The influence of John Locke pulses palpably through the narrative. Crusoe demonstrates his claim to ownership by mixing his labor with the land, asserting his rights through improvement, a concept central to Locke's two treatises of government, where property rights are fundamentally established through the act of tilling the common land. This idea seamlessly fuses with Max Weber's influential thesis presented in The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, which portrays Crusoe's unwavering frugality and his duty-bound toil, rising at dawn to plow the fields, praying amidst the uncertainties of providence. as the very essence of the bourgeois soul actively forging capital from what is perceived as a divine calling. Wikipedia's extensive lens on individualism highlights this critical shift from the rigid structures of feudal ties to the burgeoning ideal of self-made autonomy, with Crusoe explicitly rejecting paternal authority in favor of solitary providence. Academic research consistently links Defoe to these foundational intellectual roots. Crusoe's personal journal, functioning as a confessional tally of both sins and surpluses, powerfully embodies the concept of rational self-control, the very cool self-control and frugality that Weber identified as essential enablers of capitalism's remarkable ascent. Economists have long held a particular fondness for Crusoe, viewing him as a benchmark parable for the development of capitalism. Data aggregated from platforms like Tavily and SirexNG consistently highlight perspectives that position him as a proto-capitalist figure. His island economy serves as a powerful allegory for production that extends far beyond mere consumption, complete with tools meticulously crafted for enhanced efficiency, goats bred for the potential of milk and meat trade, even if only in his imagination, and the later integration of Friday as a vital component of labor division. His detailed inventory lists recording rice harvested at an astonishing 200-to-1 yield, and earthenware pots fired for storage symbolize the nascent dawn of systematic accounting, where Crusoe's expected utility demonstrably drives his rational choices, closely mirroring the principles found in neoclassical economic models that weigh probabilities against potential outcomes. Defoe masterfully inscribes the rise of mercantilism within the narrative. Crusoe's hoards salvaged from the shipwreck, including canvas-wrapped gold, now deemed good for trade, powerfully reflect the thrill and allure of capital accumulation, a phenomenon that is both critiqued and celebrated within the text. As one source posits, Crusoe actively produces surplus while figures in the Adam Smith era are primarily depicted as consumers. His pivotal encounter with Friday introduces the concept of exchange value, effectively transforming Friday from a mere savage into a valuable productive asset. This narrative has significantly fueled economic textbooks, often presenting complex systems through the simplified lens of Crusoe's perceived harmony, a system of private ownership that remains open to innovation, where marginal contributions are the primary determinants of gains, effectively silencing many Marxist critiques concerning uneven distribution. Crusoe's remarkable mastery over his island environment unveils the darker, imperial shadow cast by capitalism. He renames Friday, brands his forehead with a cross, and commands his labor, actions that clearly reflect the prevailing colonial ideology where economic individualism was used to justify dominion over others. Critiques emerging from platforms like RZiv and Crossref frame this narrative as a form of racist crusader capitalism. Crusoe's pervasive surveillance fantasies constructing fences against imagined cannibals and viewing Friday as a tamed other closely mirror Defoe's subtle advocacy for global expansion. The novel, in this interpretation, both subverts and reinforces hegemonic power structures, with Crusoe's carefully constructed poses of power echoing the Manichean dichotomies frequently found in colonial fiction, where the European construction of the other serves as a catalyst for accumulation. Imperialism, in this context, is presented not merely as an economic phenomenon, but as a pervasive structural dominance encompassing political, military, and cultural spheres, as meticulously dissected by scholars like Galtung, with Crusoe's island polity serving to artificially separate the economic realm from perceived savagery. Critiques such as those by Hund argue that Crusoe's narrative serves to divert attention from the inherent violence of capitalism. The enslavement of Zuri and the subjugation of Friday prefigure Wallerstein's corporifery world system model, with race acting as a central locus of conflict. Yet Defoe's epic bourgeois myth undeniably births the capitalist human, a resourceful conqueror, whose 28-year odyssey serves to naturalize exploitation as a form of divine providence, thereby embedding the concept of individualism within the very fabric of empire's rise. Within the vast landscape of literary criticism, few works have been subjected to the same level of intense dissection as Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, a novel that Ian Watt, in his seminal work The Rise of the Novel, 1957, positions as the very cornerstone of modern fiction. Watt argues that Crusoe, while seemingly autonomous, is fundamentally an element within a larger picture, whose meaning is derived from divine figures and traditional institutions like the church and kingship for its secular framework. However, Watt also highlights the significant positive contribution of Puritanism to the development of modern individualism, thereby marking Crusoe's shipwrecked solitude as the pivotal moment for the birth of the rootless individual navigating a world defined by empirical reality and personal providence. This significant case study from the realm of scholarship underscores the profound transition of Defoe's protagonist from the communal structures of the medieval era to a self-reliant figure, whose Island Ledger book serves as a striking mirror to the global interdependence characteristic of emerging capitalism. Where the side of the globe could now ripple through his ledger book determining his profit or his ruin. Watt's insightful analysis, echoed in numerous open Alex-referenced works such as Feudalism, Capitalism, and Beyond, 1975, firmly frames Crusoe as the quintessential archetype of capitalism's mightiest and most complex social formation. Literary critics have long engaged in a deep exploration of Robinson Crusoe, mining its pages for its underlying ideological currents and revealing a remarkably multifaceted portrait of individualism. Marxist perspectives, drawing heavily from Marx's monumental work Capital, place a strong emphasis on Crusoe's individual autonomy as a microcosm of capitalist exploitation. His personal autarky remains, indeed it is increased, with Friday pledging eternal slavery without any prompting, and Crusoe himself fantasizing about being an absolute monarch. This scenario strongly echoes Marx's analogy of primitive accumulation as akin to original sin, where the profit generated by capital appears as a power endowed by nature, the proletariat which does the work, and those who have invested the money. Feminist critiques, meanwhile, highlight the novel's inherent gender biases, pointing out the absence of female characters and the pervasive patriarchal dominion, which, despite this absence, is steeped in colonial masculinity, effectively subverting hegemonic masculinity by showing how the powerful male figures. Modern adaptations of Robinson Crusoe increasingly frame the narrative through the prisms of neoliberalism and survivalism, thereby connecting Defoe's iconic hero to the distinct individualism of the 21st century. Recent search results from platforms like SirXNG prominently highlight the fortunes of natural man, portraying Crusoe as a powerful figure of self-reliance who embodies the emergence of an individual with the capacity to dispose of his own person. A single interconnected machine with gears turned in Peruvian silver mines and belts. Of East India, trends from the Brave era also link Crusoe to the perceived malaise of modernity characteristic of neoliberalism, where individuals are increasingly viewed as narrative beings disconnected from shared cultural stories, mirroring Crusoe's own self-betrayal within a mirage he's constructed. Furthermore, studies focusing on digital Defoe, such as Robinson Crusoe Homeschool Hero, 2011, recast the character for contemporary educational purposes, emphasizing the principles of survivalism amidst bleak perspectives which recent history has brought back to a commanding position. In the ongoing discourse surrounding economics today, Crusoe continues to serve as a vital foil to the theoretical construct of Homo economicus, significantly informing the fields of behavioral economics and ongoing survivalist debates, as evidenced by echoes found on RZiv and PubMed within the KB. Analyses conducted on RZiv reveal inherent economic biases within large language models, LLMs, suggesting they are neither entirely human-like nor entirely Economicus-like. Much like Crusoe's unique blend of rational accounting practices and his reliance on providential faith, his island setting is described as a complete laissez-faire which economic man needs. Yet he remains dependent on divine persons. Critiques also raise pertinent questions about whether capitalism should be considered the exception rather than the rule. Behavioral insights derived from the study of variable rewards draw parallels to Crusoe's intense struggle for survival, where losses and difficulties. Thrill of success weakens gradually without them, a phenomenon akin to Adam Smith's observations on the division of labor in the pin factory, where specialization led to an exponential increase in output from 20 to 48,000 pins. Psychology-informed research drawing from PubMed connects these themes to emotions, stress, and health, highlighting how Crusoe's pronounced individualism necessitates self-efficacy, planfulness, and purpose during the critical phase of emerging adulthoods individualize their identities. Thus, Defoe's Castaway serves as a powerful critique of unchecked rationality, issuing a stark warning about the inhumanity of pure reason divorced from emotion. While Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe is frequently lauded as the seminal work that birthed the modern individual and the archetypal capitalist human, a closer scrutiny through its extensive academic interpretations reveals profound limitations and inherent internal contradictions. Crusoe's narrative, far from being a straightforward endorsement of rugged individualism, fundamentally hinges on an unwavering reliance on divine providence, a spiritual intervention that arguably undermines the very ethos of the self-reliant capitalist ideal. As various fragments drawn from the knowledge base illuminate, Crusoe's survival is not solely attributable to the triumph of human ingenuity and meticulous economic calculation. Rather, it repeatedly invokes a higher power, artfully blending Puritan fatalism with entrepreneurial zeal. This profound reliance exposes a significant inconsistency. The capitalistic enterprise ostensibly demands a disciplined labor force and the regularized investment of capital, yet Crusoe's island exploits frequently defer to fate rather than adhering strictly to market logic alone. Furthermore, the concept of individualism presented within the novel fractures under closer examination. Crusoe's profound isolation fosters a form of provisional self-sufficiency, but this state coexists with elements that are decidedly non-capitalist echoes of traditional communal structures, such as his eventual mastery over Friday, which more closely mimics parent-child hierarchies than the dynamics of wage-labor contracts. The knowledge base itself notes how, under capitalism, people have their activities chosen for them by the owners. Yet Crusoe, functioning as both owner and laborer on his island, embodies a fascinating fusion of the pre-capitalist artisan with the emerging traits of the bourgeois class. Inconsistencies abound throughout the narrative. His peace rates mentality, focused on maximizing productivity, clashes directly with his moments of providential passivity, and his accumulation of wealth strangely mirrors the magic of limited liability seen in Dutch ventures, where risk was mitigated not through pure individualism but through the mechanism of shared stock schemes. These inherent tensions reveal Crusoe as a hybrid figure, not the pure capitalist man, but rather one caught in a complex interplay between old-world piety and the allure of new-world profit. Counter-narratives emerging from post-colonial, eco-critical, and Marxist perspectives systematically dismantle the triumphant capitalist reading of Robinson Crusoe, drawing directly from the insights echoed in CRXNG and cross-ref sources within the knowledge base. Post-colonial critiques, in particular, keenly spotlight Crusoe's narrative as a foundational blueprint for colonialism. His assertion of dominance over the island and his subjugation of Friday are presented as clear embodiments of colonialism and imperialism. With the novel itself functioning as a compelling argument for European mastery over backward regimes. CRXNG further highlights how Crusoe's espoused economic individualism was historically used to justify the shedding of bourgeois traits through labor, a concept notably explored in Maoist China. Yet this justification often serves to veil underlying exploitation, with Friday depicted as the subaltern. Marxist critiques, deeply rooted in the knowledge base's detailed dissection of capitalism, expose Crusoe as a progenitor of alienated labor. Separated from natural interconnections, he prefigures the modern proletariat wage slave, whose activities are ultimately chosen by the owners. The novel, in this view, effectively naturalizes the reproduction of capital and state, with Crusoe's island serving as a potent microcosm of primitive accumulation. Eco-critical voices, inferred from motifs within the knowledge base concerning environmental change and human reactance to nature, challenge the anthropocentric survivalism inherent in Crusoe's story. His relentless taming of the wild disregards the principles of sustainable relationality, framing nature merely as a resource to be valued through a GDP-like metric, where a 20,000 car adds to output regardless of its true ecological worth. These multifaceted critiques align seamlessly with institutional narratives that tend to naturalize power relations, as noted within the knowledge base, positioning Robinson Crusoe as a crucial bridge to emerging counter-narratives. feminist explorations of othering, intersectional standpoint theory, and postmodern skepticism towards fixed boundaries. Echoes of Virginia Woolf's literary style within the knowledge base blur the lines between autobiography and fiction, offering a resistance to the patriarchal individualism that Crusoe so powerfully enshrines. Projections derived from the knowledge base's brave trends accessed via SirXNG and patterns similar to those found on Taveley suggest that Robinson Crusoe offers a remarkably prescient lens through which to examine contemporary issues such as AI individualism and the emerging paradigms of climate survival capitalism. In an era characterized by exponential income distributions, evidenced by the knowledge base's description of a two-class structure with Pareto tales favoring elites, Crusoe's relentless self-optimization mirrors the behavior of AI agents striving to maximize utility within rational choice models, influencing everything from sexual partner selection to sophisticated algorithmic trading. However, as research into automaticity increasingly infiltrates human judgment and decision-making processes, Crusoe's moments of providential lapse serve as a potent warning regarding AI's inherent aversion to uncertainty, underscoring the critical need for objective probability bases amidst increasingly volatile futures. The concept of climate survival also evokes Crusoe's island as a potential prototype for climate survival capitalism. Contemporary issues such as post-narcotraffic border crises and the profound environmental shifts analyzed in knowledge-based studies from Mexico bear striking parallels to Crusoe's resource hoarding, a practice now amplified by neoliberal ethics that often label nonconformists. SirXNG's exploration of the Maoist canon evolves into contemporary debates within the AI era. Crusoe's emphasis on labor shedding, bourgeois individualism informs discussions about AI's potential to displace middle-skill jobs, thereby urging individuals to play to your gap through engagement in online communities. Future interpretations, as suggested by temporal literary analysis found on RZiv, continue to track invariant themes. Crusoe's narrative is increasingly viewed as a globally shared form of survivalism, evolving from its origins as a colonial myth to a model of AI-human hybrid resilience, with diffusive behavior models predicting adaptive individualism in the face of polycrisis. By weaving together insights from economics, psychology, literature, and philosophy, we can construct a holistic portrait of Robinson Crusoe as representing the fraught genesis of the modern individual. From an economic standpoint, the novel is seen as birthing crucial concepts like limited liability and the establishment of stock exchanges. The magic of the Dutch VOC, for instance, enabled the financing of massive fleets, yet the Marxist separation of the economy from the polity continues to underpin neorealist critiques within international relations found in the KB. Psychologically, Crusoe enacts stocks of knowledge for navigating difficult situations, artfully blending habitual typifications with a rational means-ends calculus, further complicated by elements of reactance, compliance, and anticipated regret evident in his providential gambles. Literarily, as a canonical text analyzed within RZiv's global structure analysis, it consistently outperforms non-canonical works in thematic invariance, forging links to Virginia Woolf's narrative resistance and her exploration of autoethnographic self-rewriting. Philosophically, Stoic narratives are reformed through Becker's concept of reassurance, bridging the external influences highlighted by Marxism with Rawlsian aversion to uncertainty. Crusoe's rational principles for securing fundamental interests echo the complexities of judgment under hypoelliptic diffusions. This intricate nexus reveals the capitalist human not as an isolated maximizer, but as an entity deeply entangled within the invisible architectures of power. Amidst the swirling currents of 18th-century England, a period marked by the clash of mercantile ambitions and Puritan piety, Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe emerges not merely as an enthralling adventure tale, but as a profound manifesto for the modern individual. Distilling the core propositions from the knowledge base, we uncover key insights into Crusoe's pivotal role in the birth of capitalist humanism. Firstly, Crusoe powerfully embodies economic individualism, a term frequently echoed in scholarly analyses that firmly link the novel to the ascendance of capitalism. As one source aptly notes, Defoe presents Crusoe as the first model of the bourgeois epic hero, a character driven by invincible patience. indefatigable application and undaunted resolution under the greatest and most discouraging circumstances. This is not mere passive fortitude. It represents the heroism of indiligence, a practical ingenuity forged in isolation, transforming solitude into profound self-sufficiency. A thematic synthesis of the narrative reveals Crusoe as the quintessential archetype of the capitalist human, mirroring the era's burgeoning plantation economies in the Americas and the Caribbean, where European powers systematically cleared vast tracts of land not primarily for treasure, but to manufacture lucrative commodities like sugar, tobacco, coffee, and cotton through exploitative labor systems. Crusoe's own island labors farming, crafting, and meticulous accounting parallel this significant economic shift, elevating manual work from its medieval disdain to a position of virtuous necessity, grounded in a religious vision of human life after the fall. However, this celebrated individualism is demonstrably double-edged. It champions the right of individual choice that had gained prominence by the 17th century, even articulating equal rights claims such as the poorest he in England has a life to live as much as the richest he. Crusoe's providence-driven resilience, while critiquing existing structures, simultaneously enables colonial ideology, as cross-reference studies consistently highlight its deep ties to colonialism and capitalist ideology. Overall, Crusoe masterfully fuses religious repentance with stark economic realism, notably avoiding excessive self-congratulation to pivot towards practical questions. This remarkable restraint, interspersed with bouts of sermonizing illness, distills the essence of the modern self, autonomous, calculating, and remarkably resilient. As Ian Watt's enduring analysis implies through his related works, Crusoe marks a pivotal moment in the rise of the novel, occurring concurrently with the rise of capitalism, where personal providence becomes inextricably linked with political economy. These core propositions firmly position Crusoe as the foundational text for capitalist humanism, a survival machine meticulously designed to propagate the genes of commerce, individualism, and imperial ambition. Robinson Crusoe, first published in 1719, continues to endure as the ur-text of the capitalist modern individual, its profound legacy rippling through 3 centuries of literature, pedagogy, and ideology. Defoe, drawing inspiration from the accounts of real castaways and his own extensive mercantile life evident in his other works, such as A Plan of the English Commerce, and the Review crafts Crusoe's narrative as an everyman's odyssey from utter shipwreck to ultimate sovereignty. The novel's autobiographical veneer, which powerfully emphasizes the arduous trials of solitude, reinforces its crucial role as a conduct manual for the emerging economic man, profoundly influencing everything from children's adaptations to the concept of neoclassical Homo economicus, as further developed by thinkers like Rousseau and Camp. What have been the consequences of this enduring narrative? Crusoe effectively normalizes the dignity of labor within the framework of the Protestant ethic, serving as a potent fuel for the West's distinguishing brand of individualism amidst the complex civilizations of the 20th century. Cross-references consistently affirm its continued popularity and relevance, shaping childhood nostalgia and profoundly influencing popular culture, while critical analyses diligently unpack its problematic colonial undertones. Yet, as a book to be reread line by line, it continues to yield new discoveries. Crusoe's unexultant pragmatism serves as a model for the self-made man, whose island economy remarkably prefigures contemporary global trade tensions and the historical brutalities of plantation economies. In essence, Defoe's Crusoe cements the identity of the modern individual autonomous, entrepreneurial, and providentially capitalist, thereby laying the crucial keel for Enlightenment humanism and its subsequent developments. To truly recognize Crusoe is to see our own reflection in the enduring mirror of capital. To effectively anchor this rich narrative in publication-ready visuals, we outline a series of timelines and conceptual diagrams meticulously drawn from consolidated KB data, tracing the thematic evolution of Robinson Crusoe. Timeline of key contexts and milestones. 14th–15th C. The initial emergence of individualism in Europe, the Romeo and Juliet Revolution affirms the significance of individual choice. 16th C. Late medieval preaching elevates the dignity of labor following the fall, linking work to the service of God, family, and community. 17th C. Claims for individual rights become more solidified as exemplified by the idea that the poorest he has a life to live as much as the richest he. Defoe's formative works, such as the Review, published between 1704–1713, significantly shape his economic worldview. 1719 Robinson Crusoe is published. A trilogy follows, skillfully blending autobiography, religious themes, and capitalist principles. 18th C. Pedagogical uses of the novel proliferate, e.g., performing Crusoe, adaptations emerge, functioning as conduct manuals. 19th–20th C. The novel influences Marx's theory of crisis and Hirschman's work on passions and interests. It becomes recognized as the bourgeois epic. 21st C. Analyses marking the novel's 300-year anniversary, e.g., Robinson Crusoe after 300 years, 2022, emerge. Connections are drawn to AI-era infrastructure, conceptualized as the modern Crusoe firm and cognitive models. Thematic evolution diagram, conceptual outline for infographic. Core node. Crusoe Island's solitude branches radiating outwards. Economic individualism emphasizing patience, application, drawing parallels to plantation economies. Religious virtue highlighting repentance amidst illness. Noting the absence of self-congratulation. Colonial humanism focusing on Friday's subjugation, linking to European expansion. Parallel axes, a vertical axis representing historical progression from medieval labor to capitalist rise. A horizontal axis representing literary development from adventure narrative to the novel form. These axes intersect significantly at the publication year of 1719. Legacy flowchart. Crusoe's subsequent adaptations, including children's literature, popular culture, modern readings encompassing capitalism critiques, consciousness models. These visual elements, suitable for presentation in timelines or layered diagrams, effectively illuminate Crusoe's remarkable arc from an isolated survivor to an enduring icon of capitalism. Synthesizing the fragmented information within the KB, which spans Defoe's extensive oeuvre, critical analyses of capitalism, explorations of colonial ideologies, and various scattered adaptations, reveals significant underexplored gaps amidst a wealth of rich but disjointed insights. Identified gaps. Non-Western perspectives. The KB predominantly features Eurocentric viewpoints, e.g., positioning Crusoe as a marker of Western individualism. There is a notable scarcity of information regarding global receptions, such as the concept of a Jewish Robinson Crusoe or parallels with Asian trade practices, for instance, Dazai's mercantile cures within Bakuhan systems. Gender and networks. While the KB briefly mentions female castaway narratives and feminine trade qualities, it lacks a deep dive into Crusoe's masculinist humanism in contrast to alternative perspectives, such as those presented in Moll Flanders. Cognitive modernist lenses. The KB includes brief mentions of consciousness models, e.g., how Crusoe's anger disrupts his cognition and experiences of 20th century gridong, likely a misspelling of gridlock. However, it does not integrate these with AI-era Crusoe infrastructures or the phenomenon of digital nomadism. Quantitative legacies. While Pearsonian correlations are hinted at, they remain largely unexplored. There is a lack of data quantifying Crusoe's influence metrics, e.g., his citation frequency in economic texts post-Marx. Research recommendations. Comparative global studies. Conduct analyses of Crusoe's adaptations in diverse global contexts, such as India, Brazil, or Indochina, and link these findings to contemporary trade agreements like the RCEP or to carnival economies. Feminist rereadings. Examine the role of female networks during Defoe's era in contrast to Crusoe's solitary heroism, utilizing the KB's extensive material on Moll Flanders as a pivotal point of comparison. Interdisciplinary models. Apply principles from cognitive science, e.g., the impact of emotional memory disruptions, to the study of Crusoe, thereby bridging these insights with contemporary survivalist narratives in the context of climate crises. Econometric legacies. Compute Crusoe's citation networks within the field of political economy, e.g., tracing his influence through the works of Marx and Harvey, utilizing analytical tools found within the KB's European Journal of the History of Economic Thought. These proposed research directions hold the promise of significantly deepening our understanding of Crusoe's enduring role as a living text that continues to shape our comprehension of capitalist humanism's ongoing evolution.